Chapter 3642. Madam, if the culprit isn't caught, then will we be in danger in the future? Madam, we're just ordinary people. If there's any danger, then we don't have the ability to protect ourselves. Madam, please help us find the culprit so that we can be at ease. Yes, madam. Please be merciful and help us. Please, madam. Feng Jiu sighed lightly as she gazed at the villagers who were begging in panic, and she said, "Get up. I'll get someone to investigate." "Thank you, madam." Everyone couldn't help but reveal expressions of joy when they heard this, and they repeatedly thanked her. Lung Hua, get Wei Feng and Gu Mo to investigate the abnormality from last night. Feng Jiu instructed as she sat in the courtyard and drank tea. Yes, Lung Hua replied, and then he glanced at Lung Shuang before walking out. Master, we found a corpse in a patch of grass that's quite far from here. It's a guard that was patrolling last night. A guard came forward and spoke in a low voice. When he heard this, the middle-aged man instinctively looked towards the red-clothed woman that was drinking tea. He saw that her expression was indifferent, as if she hadn't heard anything. He was just about to speak when he saw her put down the teacup and stand up. Lung Shuang, he probably won't be able to leave until noon. Get someone to prepare lunch when we return. Feng Jiu spoke as she walked out slowly. Yes, Lung Shuang replied before leaving with her. After he watched them leave, the middle-aged man rushed over to take a look at the dead guard. He'd originally thought that the guard would die in the same manner as his daughter, yet he saw that the guard had died from the wound on his head that had been pierced by a sharp object. "Father, what weapon did this wound come from?" the man asked his father. The middle-aged man glanced at it and said, "It doesn't look like a weapon. It looks more like something sharp." As he spoke, he gazed at the two guards that were patrolling and asked, "Was there anything unusual about him last night? Where did he go?" Just as he was asking, he saw two outstanding men walking over. After glancing at them, they looked at the corpse on the ground and sized it up before looking at the two guards at the side. "It just so happens that we'll listen to it as well. Both of you speak." As Wei Feng spoke, his gaze descended onto the two guards. Seeing that it was the red-clothed madam subordinate, the middle-aged man nodded and signaled the guard to explain the matter clearly. Last night, when he went to the back of the house to relieve himself, he accidentally fell into a ravine. At that time, we heard a scream and went to check on him. We also heard him say that he was fine. After a while, he came back with his face covered in blood and very pale. At that time, we were all shocked by him. Because the blood had dried up, we didn't see how deep the wound was. When we saw that his face was covered in blood, we asked him to treat his wound. However, after he went to treat his wound, he didn't come back. Wei Feng rubbed his chin when he heard this, and then he asked, "What about in between? Other than that, is there anything else unusual?" "Abnormal." The two guards were called, and then they suddenly slapped their heads. "There is. I felt that something was off last night." When we asked him to go back and apply medicine, he actually wanted to walk towards the young miss room. Moreover, he gave us a very strange feeling at that time, and it was very different from usual. The middle-aged man was stunned when he heard this, and he didn't say anything. Chapter 3643. The two guards glanced at their master, and when they saw him nod slightly, they led the two of them towards the weeds behind the house. When they arrived at that place, they said, "It's here. He came here to relieve himself last night, and then he might have accidentally fallen into the ravine below." Gu Mo walked forward and strode over the weeds to arrive at the edge of the ravine. When he looked carefully, the weeds in the surroundings had traces of being trampled flat, and it was sufficient to prove that the person had indeed come here last night. When he looked down into the ravine, he saw that there was a pool of dried bloodstains amidst the rocks and sand, and a sharp object was revealed just like that amidst the bloodstains. "Go dig up that thing below. Be careful and don't shatter it," Wei Feng said to the two guards at his side. The two guards replied before leaping down, and then they found something to carefully dig up the dirt and sand. They hadn't dug for long when their scalps couldn't help but go numb, and they cried out in a low voice as they took a step back. What's wrong?" The middle-aged man frowned as he asked. "A corpse." The two men spoke with slightly trembling voices. Even though they'd killed in the past, it was the first time they'd done something like digging up a corpse, and they couldn't help but feel a chill run down their spines. What do you think it is if it isn't a corpse? Wei Feng glanced at them with a spurious smile, and then he said to the middle-aged man, "My master said that there's a strand of energy within your daughter's body, and her vital energy and blood ought to have been absorbed by a spirit. He asked us to act from this aspect. If there's no mishap, then this corpse ought to be the spirit that absorbed your daughter's vital energy and blood." The middle-aged man's face went slightly pale as he asked, "If it's really like this, then what can we do if we dig up this corpse?" That spirit had probably fled to another place since a long time ago. "It's useless for all of you to dig it up, but it's different for us." Wei Feng chuckled and said, "After we dig out this corpse, we'll naturally have a way to make that spirit appear by itself." The middle-aged man said to the two guards right away when he saw this, "Quickly dig out all the bones." While they were busy, Feng Jiao was sitting in his room, eating spirit fruits and reading a book comfortably. Bai Qingsheng and Qin Xin went to prepare lunch. Luo Yu said that he was going to see if there were any wild animals in the nearby forest to prepare lunch. Not long after, Wei Feng and Gu Mo returned. They entered the room and bowed towards Feng Jiao. "Master, it is indeed as Master said. It was done by ghosts and spirits. We have already found the corpse. You guys can deal with it. There's no need to tell me." Feng Jiao's eyes were still on the book in his hand as he said, "Come back for lunch." Luo Yu added more dishes. Hearing this, the two smiled at each other and replied, "Yes." Because they were delayed by this matter, Feng Jiao and the others who originally intended to leave today had stayed here for another night. After all, it would be fine if the culprit was a person, and it would be convenient to deal with. But it just so happened that it was a spirit, so they could only make a move at night. Feng Jiao didn't interfere when a matter was handed over to his subordinates. After all, with their current strengths, dealing with such a small matter was naturally extremely easy. Chapter 36:44. On the ground, a corpse was placed in the center of the formation. Wei Feng and Gu Mo stood beside the formation. Du Fan and the others were either sitting or standing in front of the house, not far away. They were calmly watching as if they were watching a show. In Feng Jiao's house, Leng Shuang and Leng Hua stood guard outside. Feng Jiao had entered the space to cultivate and didn't pay attention to what was happening outside. As the sky gradually darkened, when Wei Feng activated the formation, a gale suddenly appeared and a gust of cold wind blew. The guards and the people from the Su family could clearly feel that the aura in the air had become cold at that instant. It was bone-chilling and caused them to involuntarily shiver. Aside from Wei Feng and Gu Mo, there was no one else around the formation. Even the people from the Su family were around 10 meters away from the formation. Accompanied by the surge of spirit energy from the formation, the corpse on the ground rose up and floated above the formation. In the forest around 50 kilometers away, an soul that was wandering around suddenly let out a miserable shriek. The miserable shriek pierced through the air, and it felt that it was out of control. It was as if something was roasting it in flames. The sharp pain from its spine reached the depths of its soul. Its shadow flashed in the air as if it was being summoned by something. It tried to hug the tree in fear, but in the next moment, it was pulled back by a powerful force. The chin of the corpse floating in the air moved, and a cry of surprise came from the corpse, causing the guards to widen their eyes in fright. The middle-aged man clenched his fists tightly as he stared at the skeleton. This was the murderer who had killed his daughter. "Let me go! Let me go! Who are you? Why are you using my corpse to capture me?" The ferocious and bloodthirsty voice was filled with viciousness. The corpse was like a wild beast that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws in an attempt to attack Wei Feng and Gu Mo. However, its soul was locked within the corpse, and it was unable to escape even if it wanted to, let alone attack them. Wei Feng and Gu Mo glanced at each other before withdrawing their gazes, and their gazes descended onto the nearby, middle-aged man as they said, "You want us to make a move directly, or do you want to do it yourself?" Hearing this, the middle-aged man gratefully stepped forward and cupped his hands at the two of them. "Thank you, young masters. Please let me do it myself." I want to grind his bones to dust. Don't let him reincarnate." Wei Feng and Gu Mo retreated to the side when they saw this and allowed him to deal with it himself. It was merely a Yin soul. Now that it was trapped by the formation, it was impossible for it to escape. Go and find a hammer," the middle-aged man ordered in a deep voice. In a place like this small village, there was nothing else, but practically every single house had a hammer. After all, the commoners had to make chairs, tables, and so on by themselves. Thus, after the man replied, he walked into a room, and it wasn't long before he withdrew a hammer. "What do you intend to do? What do you intend to do?" As they gazed at the hammer, the floating corpse that was trapped in midair and unable to escape struggled while its soul tried to break through the restraints and escape. However, no matter how it struggled, it was still trapped by the formation and was unable to break free. Chapter 36:45. A miserable cry rang out as the bone was shattered by the middle-aged man's hammer. Along with the shattering of the bone, a series of hissing sounds rang out as if something was being corroded. It instantly turned into ashes and dissipated into the air. The hatred of crushing bones and scattering ashes caused the hearts of the surrounding guards to involuntarily turn cold. However, just as their master was about to remove the second bone with a calm expression, the corpse suddenly flashed. The Yin spirit shook slightly, and the woman's face faintly appeared. "Father, I'm in pain. Father, save me. Save me." The familiar sobbing voice caused the middle-aged man to stiffen. He stared blankly as the Yin spirit on the corpse turned into his daughter. As he watched his daughter suffer the pain, he was shocked, and the hammer in his hand fell to his feet. Hiss! The hammer hit his foot, and the pain caused him to suck in a breath of cold air. At the same time, it caused his mind to suddenly become clear. He stared at the crying Yin spirit and shook his head. His low voice was filled with grief. "No, you're not my daughter, you're not." He picked up the hammer on the ground and poured spirit force into his hand. In the next moment, he held the hammer and soared into the air. "Return my daughter's life." Crack! That strike heavily landed on the head. With a crack, the head split open. Along with the injection of spirit force, the scattered head instantly turned into ashes and scattered all over the ground. The other corpses also split open along with the head and fell onto the formation on the ground. A miserable and sharp scream tore through the night and gradually dissipated. The Yin spirit was destroyed, the corpse turned into ashes, and the formation on the ground gradually dissipated. The middle-aged man stood there in a daze with the hammer in his hand, and a tear silently fell from his eye. "Father!" Two men walked up and supported him. Only now did the middle-aged man recover from his shock. He took a deep breath and tossed the hammer away before walking towards Wei Feng and Gu Mo. "Young masters, I want to thank your madam. May I?" Wei Feng glanced at him and said, "My master is already resting. She has orders, so there's no need to thank her. She wasn't helping you." The middle-aged man paused for a moment and asked, "Then may I ask what's your name?" If it wasn't for the woman in red ordering them to help, they would probably be utterly unable to take revenge by themselves. Now that his daughter's death had been avenged, even if the woman didn't need his thanks, he still hoped to know who had helped him take revenge. Wei Feng glanced at him and said, "It's merely a small matter. My madam didn't take it to heart, so you don't have to remember it." As he spoke, he turned around and left with Gu Mo. On the other side, Du Fan and the others, who were standing in front of the house, smiled when they saw them return. They chatted and laughed as they walked inside. Once the door was closed, everything outside was isolated. Chapter 36:46. The middle-aged man pondered for a long time before saying, "Looking at them for the past 2 days, I was reminded of someone." "Who?" the two men asked at the same time. "Ghost Dr. Fengjiu." The middle-aged man's eyes flashed when he said these words. From his observation, the woman in red was very likely to be Ghost Dr. Fengjiu. Almost everyone knew about the battle between Fengjiu, Sovereign Tongtian, and the Black Lotus Lord. In the entire world, only Ghost Dr. Fengjiu could match the beauty of the woman in red. Although he had never seen her before, It was said that the men and women around Fengjiu were all extremely outstanding with unfathomable strength. From his conjecture and the people in front of them, the woman in red who was called Master by those outstanding men and women was very likely to be Ghost Dr. Fengjiu. One had to know that this area was originally under Sovereign Tongtian's jurisdiction. After the death of Sovereign Tongtian and the Black Lotus Lord, although no other sovereigns came to take over this area, everyone knew that this area belonged to Ghost Dr. Fengjiu and Xianyuan Mose. Although they didn't take over now, it didn't mean that they wouldn't become sovereigns in the future. If other sovereigns wanted to take over this area, it would be the same as making an enemy out of Ghost Dr. Fengjiu and the others. From the current situation, it was clear that no sovereigns were willing to make an enemy out of Fengjiu and the others for this area. This also meant that sooner or later, the sovereign here would be Fengjiu. Ghost Dr. Fengjiu? The Ghost Dr. Fengjiu who fought with the Black Lotus Lord? The two of them couldn't help but exclaim softly. They were shocked by their father's guess, while the three of them were guessing the identity of Fengjiu's group. On the other hand, Fengjiu's group was resting, chatting, and cultivating. The night gradually passed until the next morning. When the sky brightened, Fengjiu's group left quietly. The villagers didn't know, but the middle-aged man's family knew. However, they didn't come out to send them off. They just watched them leave through the window. Several days later, Fengjiu and the others arrived at Qianling Mountain. Before entering the mountain, Fengjiu stored the carriage into the space, and the group walked into the mountain forest. She brought them to the waterfall cave that she and Xianyuan Mose had discovered. The group of people swept through the forest like the wind and didn't alarm the people from the hidden clans of Qianling Mountain. When the ferocious beasts in the forest sensed their presence, they all fled far away, not daring to approach them. This saved them a lot of trouble. When they arrived at the waterfall, Fengjiu said to the people behind her, "Let's rest here tonight. Make some preparations and light a fire to drive away the cold night air." "Yes, sir." Everyone responded and quickly divided the work among themselves. Fengjiu looked at the waterfall and couldn't help but think of the time she came here with Xianyuan Mose. Now, she was here again, but he was still asleep, revisiting an old place, but things had changed. Her mood couldn't help but become heavy. She walked down the waterfall and came to a place where the water was shallow. She scooped up some water and washed her face. Chapter 36:47. Fan Lin walked over and saw her using the cold water to wash her face. He was worried that her body, which had just recovered, would not be able to withstand the cold spring water. "It's fine," Fengjiu said. She sat down on a rock at the side and said, "Fan Lin, go and see if everyone has enough medicinal pills on them. If not, help them distribute some." "Okay," Fan Lin responded, but he was worried about her sitting there alone. So, when he turned to leave, he signaled Lung Shuang to pay more attention. Lung Shuang came to Fengjiu's side. Seeing her sitting on a rock, he asked, "Master, do you want to soak your feet?" Fengjiu agreed. Thinking that the mountain spring water was cool and refreshing, she thought it would be very comfortable to soak her feet in it. Perhaps it could also disperse the depression in her heart. She wanted to take off her boots, but Lung Shuang was faster than her. "Master, just sit." Lung Shuang helped her take off her boots and carefully placed her feet in the water. The water was very shallow, only reaching her ankles. The cool feeling seeped from the soles of her feet to her heart, gradually relaxing her somewhat depressed mood. She leaned back slightly, leaning against a rock at the side. She supported her head with one hand and closed her eyes comfortably. The people over there were busy picking up branches to start a fire and hunting prey. Under everyone's busy work, the fire was lit, the small tent was also set up, and the smell of barbecued meat filled the air. Fengjiu's feet were placed on the rock to dry. She only soaked for a short while before curling up. Leaning against the rock, she unknowingly fell asleep because of the comfort of this place. Lung Shuang next to her stood guard. Seeing that she had fallen asleep, he took out a cloak and covered her with it. He carefully helped her dry her feet and put on her boots. At the same time, he signaled the people over there to be quiet, so as not to disturb Master. Lung Shuang saw that his mistress was sleeping with her head slightly tilted, so he sat beside her and let her rest her head on her shoulder. He used one hand to protect her so that she wouldn't fall to the other side in her sleep. Feng Jiu woke up to the smell of meat, but when she woke up, the sky was already dark. She saw that she was leaning on Lung Shuang's shoulder, so she yawned and smiled. I accidentally fell asleep. I've been feeling sleepy lately. Fan Lin said that it's easier for mistress to get sleepy when she's pregnant. Lung Shuang said. Seeing that she had woken up, he helped her put on a cloak and said, "It's cold at night. Mistress, put on a cloak." Feng Jiu responded and let her help her put on the cloak. "Master, the barbecue is ready." Luo Yu's voice came from not far away. "Mistress, I also cooked some spirit rice porridge. If you don't want to eat the barbecue, you can have some porridge." Qin Xian's voice also followed. Feng Jiu and Lung Shuang walked over. She glanced at them and smiled. She walked to the fire and sat down. "Anything is fine. I'm really hungry today." Seeing this, everyone couldn't help but smile. They cut a piece of barbecue and handed it to her. Then, they brought a small bowl of spirit rice porridge forward. Feng Jiu also felt a little hungry, so her appetite was good. She ate a piece of barbecue and drank 2 small bowls of spirit rice porridge. After eating with everyone, Feng Jiu had everyone sit around the fire and told them about the situation. Chapter 36:48. Everyone looked at each other and replied, "Yes, master." For their master to specially instruct them like this, it must be an extremely dangerous place. That night, everyone went to bed early and prepared to rest well to welcome the arrival of the next day. The next morning, when the first rays of the morning sun shone on the earth, Feng Jiu and the others had already gotten up and packed up, preparing to explore the cavern behind the waterfall. Feng Jiu led everyone to the back of the waterfall and walked along the path inside. Luo Yu and Du Fan, who were walking in front, looked at the pitch-black surroundings and said, "Master, how deep is this cave?" Before they could finish their sentence, they heard a roar. Immediately after, a shadow suddenly pounced out from the dimly lit cave. "Be careful," Feng Jiu shouted and saw Luo Yu and Du Fan suddenly react. "Master, retreat first." As the two spoke, they faced the fierce beast that was pouncing over. However, when they got close, Luo Yu couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice, "Wow, how is this a fierce beast? This is clearly a divine beast." Roar! With this roar, the pressure of the divine beast fiercely attacked in the cave. However, Lung Hua and the others were blocking in front of Feng Jiu, and the pressure of the divine beast couldn't hurt her. The flame in Gu Mo's Wei Feng's hand illuminated the area. When they cut out a cluster of flames and moved it forward, they finally saw the appearance of the divine beast clearly. "What divine beast is this? I've never seen it before." Wei Feng looked at the divine beast in astonishment and was somewhat astonished. Each of them had a divine beast as a contract beast. The pressure of the divine beast couldn't even hurt them, let alone their master. However, they were still a little shocked by the sudden appearance of a ferocious beast that had turned into a divine beast. After all, even in the extremely dangerous forest outside, it was not easy to encounter a divine beast. Why would it hide in the cave behind the waterfall? Feng Jiu looked at Luo Yu and Du Fan fighting against the 2 mythological beasts and said lightly, "The place we're going to pass through should be a place filled with extremely vicious beasts, and most of the vicious beasts there should be at least at the mythological beast level, so you should be careful." Hearing this, everyone was silent. Most of them were ferocious beasts that had reached the level of divine beasts. He really couldn't afford to be careless. Roar! Another roar was heard, and the faint smell of blood permeated the cave. Smelling the smell of blood, Feng Jiu had a faint feeling that he had committed a crime. She took out a sour plum from her space and put it in her mouth, pressing it under her tongue to suppress the nausea. Roar! Roar! The divine beast retreated step by step, cautiously staring at the 2 people in front of it, then looking at Feng Jiu and the others behind it. Chapter 36:49. Then we don't want it. Do you think we won't have any meat to eat after we pass that place? Wei Feng laughed and held the fire to illuminate the ground. He said to Fengjiu, "Master, be careful. Don't step on the blood on the ground." Fengjiu responded and continued to walk forward with them. Along the way, when they arrived at the place where she and Xinyuan Mose went that day, Fengjiu said to them, "All of you, back off a little. I'll open this door." Seeing this, everyone backed off and looked at the illusory wall in astonishment. They saw their master take out a mirror and place it on the ground. Along with the mirror landing on the ground, a ray of light was refracted from somewhere and quickly formed a formation on the ground and the wall. When the illusory wall in front of them was opened, everyone couldn't help but look at it in astonishment. They didn't expect it to be such a different world. If their master hadn't brought them here, they probably wouldn't have been able to pass through here. "Let's go." Fengjiu indicated for them to go over. After they went over, she picked up the mirror on the ground and also walked over. After they went over, the illusory wall that was opened behind them slowly closed up, isolating both sides. Roar! Roar! Perhaps they sensed that an unfamiliar aura had come to their place. The two divine beasts that were coiled up in this cave let out threatening growls. In the pitch-black light, the four eyes of the two divine beasts were suffused with a cold and bloodthirsty light. They stared at the gradually approaching human figures and the flame that was gradually illuminating the cave. When the two mythological beasts saw Luo Yu, Du Fan, and the others walking in front of them, they lowered their bodies slightly and bared their sharp teeth, ready to fight. However, when the red figure in the middle of the group jumped into the eyes of the two mythological beasts, the two ferocious mythological beasts suddenly trembled in fear like mice seeing a cat. Roar! Roar! There were still two growls, but these two growls had already become very weak and without any vigor. The two divine beasts retreated step by step. Their eyes were filled with fear and vigilance as they stared at Fengjiu, who was slowly walking over. They remembered this human's aura. This was a human that they couldn't provoke. However, didn't this human come here last time? Why was he here again? The two divine beasts retreated step by step. They didn't even dare to directly turn around and leave their backs to Fengjiu and instead walked backwards, for fear that Fengjiu and the others would suddenly attack them. Master, do these two divine beasts recognize you? Luo, you looked at the two divine beasts. They didn't dare to directly turn around and run, but they were guarded. And look, their eyes TTS. Fengjiu glanced at them indifferently and said, "Last time, Mose and I came here, and these two divine beasts were lucky enough to escape from us." "I see. No wonder they seem to be so afraid of you." Luo Yu grinned and said, "Master, there are quite a few divine beasts here. We've only walked for a while, and we've already met 3. Chapter 3650. Hearing this, the two godly beasts looked at each other. They didn't believe that they wanted to ask for directions. If they were caught, they wouldn't even be able to live. Thinking of this, they couldn't care about anything else. After retreating a few meters, they quickly turned around and ran out. Seeing this scene, everyone was speechless. These two godly beasts were actually scared to this extent? What did Master and Yama Lord do to them the last time they came? How could they be so traumatized? The group walked out and found that the cave was winding left and right. There were quite a few caves, and there seemed to be the aura of ferocious beasts hidden in those caves. However, no ferocious beasts dared to show their heads. When they went out, what entered their eyes was an endless forest. The damp forest was covered in lush leaves and weeds. Between the branches, poisonous snakes could be seen sticking out their tongues and making hissing sounds. This place is actually more humid than the place we came from. Moreover, there are many more poisonous insects. As Wei Feng spoke, he used the sword in his hand to cut the surrounding weeds to prevent them from scraping Fengjiu. "Let's find a place to rest first, then see where this place is." As Long Hua spoke, he let everyone walk forward first. After finding a relatively flat place without so many weeds to rest, they would make plans. "Master, be careful." Qin Xin and by Qin Sheng followed beside Fengjiu and told her to be careful. After all, The road was uneven and there were a lot of gravel. In, Fengjiu responded and walked forward. When the group of people arrived at a sandy area, the surroundings were relatively spacious, and only then did they rest their feet. Du Fan, Wei Feng, Luo Yu, and the others soared into the air, intending to see how far they were from the forest. Unexpectedly, when they leaped up and saw the boundless forest around them, they couldn't help but be dumbstruck. Are we in the depths of this forest? We can't even see which direction is the exit. Luo Yu said dumbfoundedly. There were endless towering trees around them. As far as the eye could see, it was either a mountain or a tree. They had no idea where the exit was. Du Fan was fanning himself with the fan in his hand. Suddenly, he closed his fan and pointed in a direction. Look over there. What's that? Wei Feng and Luo Yu looked towards the direction he pointed at, and they saw a black mass over there that looked like birds. But the distance was still slightly far, so they couldn't see it clearly. It should be a bird, but this bird seems a little big. Not good. They're coming for us. As Luo Yu spoke, he hurriedly pulled the two of them down. However, in just a short while, the flock of birds that looked extremely far away had already arrived in front of them. The black mass of birds flew towards the three of them. Quickly find a place to hide. Wei Feng shouted at Fengjiu and the others as he was worried that heading towards them would draw those birds towards them. Thus, he didn't dare turn back and flashed toward another direction instead. Whoosh whoosh. As the swift and fierce sound of air currents tore through the air, the cries of sounded out from the mouths of those enormous blackbirds. They seemed like humans, yet weren't humans, seemed like birds, yet weren't birds, and emitted a strange and bloodthirsty aura. Everywhere those enormous blackbirds passed, the lush, towering trees would instantly become like withered trees, and not a single leaf could be found. Chapter 36:51. Miserable cries came from the mouths of those giant birds. A few of them dodged quickly and escaped, while those that didn't escape were burned to ashes by the flames and dissipated in the air. When Luo Yu, Wei Feng, and Du Fan saw this, they glanced at each other and quickly returned to Fengjiu's side. Master, Fengjiu glanced at the three of them and said, "Those are man-eating crows. They specialize in targeting prey in the air. Generally speaking, no one would appear in the air without any concealment like you did before." The three of them couldn't help but lower their heads. Master, we will pay attention next time. They were careless and didn't expect those man-eating crows to be so fast. Fengjiu looked at the sky. In the next moment, she took a breath and flew into the air. She glanced at the surroundings. Sure enough, she saw layers upon layers of mountains and endless trees. Immediately, she waved her hand, and a flying ship appeared in the air. Come on. She stepped into the ship and opened the ship's boundary at the same time. When the people below saw this, they couldn't help but be happy. They quickly followed and entered the ship. Master, are we going to take the ship and leave this place directly? Luo Yu asked with joy. After staying in the damp area for a while, he felt much more comfortable after entering the ship. After we leave this place, let's find out what kind of place this is, Fengjiu said. She went to the bow of the ship and laid down on the soft couch. The ship slowly flew in the direction of the sun, isolated from the dangers of the forest below. There were all kinds of things on the ship. There was no need to guard against the surrounding dangers. Qin Xian and Bai Qingsheng prepared some food for Fengjiu. Everyone sat idly and looked at the forest below. They looked at the dangerous situation below as if they were admiring it. It seems that there are quite a few people here other than us. Du Fan gently fanned himself with the fan in his hand and looked at the wisps of smoke rising from below. In the forest, all you see are trees. Now that you're up here, you can see things that you can't see in the forest. Luo Yu grinned and relaxed. However, at this moment, the spaceship suddenly made a loud bang, as if it was hit by something. What crashed into our ship? Luo Yu jumped up and released his divine sense. He saw a giant eagle trying to break through their barrier. The sound of the giant eagle crashing into the barrier was the sound of the giant eagle crashing into the barrier. Another divine beast and a stage 5 divine beast. Luo Yu glanced at the giant eagle, feeling that it was courting death. They had a barrier protecting the ship, and the strength of the people inside had not been revealed. Otherwise, how could a rank 5 divine beast dare to target them? Due to the collision, Feng Jiu's body, which was lying on the soft couch, swayed slightly. She frowned and said to them, "Kill them." "Yes," Luo Yu and the others replied. Just as they were about to move out, Fan Lin stopped them. "You guys lure that giant hawk away. Don't hit the ship. Master has a body, so the ship can't shake violently." "Okay, we got it," Luo Yu and Du Fan replied. Guimo and Wei Feng also went out. Chapter 3652. Trying to escape? It's too late. Luo Yu shouted as he swung the sword in his hand horizontally. A sharp sword aura instantly burst forth and sliced towards the giant eagle's claws like a sharp blade. A shrill eagle cry was heard as the eagle's claws were sliced off and swiftly fell into the forest. Seeing that the giant eagle was about to die, Luo Yu said, "I'll leave this place to you guys. I'll go down and pick up the eagle's claws. A divine beast's eagle's claws are worth quite a bit of money. Go. Be careful." Du Fan smiled and only withdrew his gaze when he saw Luo Yu heading down. Seeing that Gu Mo and Wei Feng had already dealt with the giant eagle and dug out the crystal core, he said, "I'll return to the flying ship first." After entering the flying ship, Du Fan reported to Feng Jiu, "Master, that giant eagle has been dealt with." Luo Yu sliced off the eagle's claws, and it fell into the forest below. He went down to pick it up and will be back in a while. Feng Jiu responded and narrowed her eyes, but didn't say anything. Not long after, Wei Feng and Gu Mo returned as well. Their bodies were stained with the smell of eagle blood, causing Feng Jiu to frown in discomfort. That evil feeling surged up again, causing her to involuntarily retch. "Ugh, Master! Master!" Everyone couldn't help but be shocked when they saw this, and hurriedly went forward. At this moment, Fan Lin and Lung Shuang blocked Wei Feng and Gu Mo, who were going forward at the same time, and said in unison, "Stay away from Master." Wei Feng and Gu Mo couldn't help but be stunned when they heard this, and were slightly confused. "Master, drink some water." Qin Xian went forward with water. "Master, sour plum." Lung Shuang turned around and took out a sour plum and handed it over. Fan Lin saw that her face had turned pale and said to the two of them, "Quickly go wash off the smell of blood on your bodies and change your clothes." Hearing this, the two of them realized that it was the smell of blood on their bodies that made their master unable to stand it. But their master didn't know how to do it before, so why, as if he knew what they were thinking, Fan Lin signaled for the two of them to leave. He followed them to the side and said to them, "This woman is pregnant. Some can't get used to the smell of greasy food, some can't get used to the smell of fish, and some can't stand the smell of blood. In the future, you should pay more attention. After the first 3 months, the master will be much better." Hearing this, they nodded. "We understand. We'll go change now," the two of them said and walked into the cabin. When Lung Hua, Hui Lang, and the others heard this, they looked at each other and secretly remembered Fan Lin's words. Because they were waiting for Luo Yu's return, the spaceship stopped in midair. Feng Jiu rested for a while, and with a sour plum in her mouth, she managed to suppress that feeling. Thinking about how she couldn't stand the smell of blood and the signs of morning sickness, her eyes moved slightly, and she called out to Fan Lin. "Fan Lin, come here." "Master, are you feeling better?" Fan Lin walked over and asked. Feng Jiu responded and said, "Come and help me make some pills. You do what I say." Hearing this, Fan Lin was startled for a moment, but still nodded. "Yes." Lung Hua and Hui Lang moved a long table over and saw Feng Jiu take out some spiritual medicine from her space. She placed all kinds of spiritual medicine on the table, and Fan Lin hurriedly took out the tools to make the medicine. Chapter 3653. Feng Jiu supported his head with one hand as he watched Fan Lin concoct the medicine while instructing him on how to get the medicine, use the medicine, and prepare the medicine. She took a sip of the water that Sheen Exine handed to her and glanced at the ship. She raised her eyebrows and asked, "Why isn't Luo Yu back yet?" Hearing her question, everyone realized that Luo Yu hadn't returned even after so long. Du Fan immediately said, "I'll go down and take a look." "I'll go with you," Wei Feng said as they flew out of the ship's barrier and headed towards the forest below. Below, Luo Yu didn't find the pair of eagle claws that fell down, but he saw bloodstains on the ground. He followed the bloodstains and saw a group of mercenaries sitting around a fire in the forest, laughing and drinking. "My eagle claws were taken by you guys?" He stood not far away and asked. His gaze fell on the bloodstains on the ground. Beside one of the mercenaries, there was something wrapped in a piece of black cloth that faintly revealed its shape. It seemed to be the pair of eagle claws, without a doubt. "Your eagle claws? Ha 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 ha. Brothers, listen, this person actually said he has eagle claws. Ha ha ha. So he's not a person, he's an animal." One of the mercenaries raised his head and laughed loudly, mocking and ridiculing Luo Yu. Obviously, he didn't take Luo Yu, who was alone, seriously. Hearing this, a cold light flashed through Luo Yu's eyes. He looked at those people and revealed a smile. "It's been a long time since someone dared to speak to me like this. You're very bold." When his voice fell, no one saw how his figure flashed. In the blink of an eye, the man who was originally standing about 10 meters away from them arrived in front of them. Moreover, he grabbed the mercenary who mocked him earlier by the throat and lifted him up. "You want to die? Just say it. I'll fulfill your wish." Luo Yu's cold voice was filled with killing intent as he tightened his grip on the mercenary. The mercenary struggled for a long time, but was unable to break free. His face was flushed red, and it was difficult for him to breathe. His face turned from red to purple, and the strength of his struggle was slowly draining away. Finally, the sound of bones breaking could be heard, and the mercenary's entire body stopped breathing. His body was limp as he was lifted up with one hand and thrown into the middle of the other mercenaries. His speed was too fast, and this move had shocked the mercenaries. It wasn't until he threw the mercenary's corpse in front of everyone that the mercenaries came back to their senses. "How dare you kill him?" One of the mercenaries shouted angrily. He picked up the broadsword beside him and rushed forward. "Brothers, kill this brat. Kill him. Kill him." 30 to 40 mercenaries' fierce voices were filled with bloodthirsty, killing intent. Even if they didn't take revenge for the dead mercenary, they couldn't tolerate this person's impudence in front of them. If they didn't kill him, where would their mercenary group's prestige be in the future? Looking at those people who pounced on him, Luo Yu snorted coldly. With a wave of his sleeve, a fierce wind from his palm struck out, fiercely attacking those mercenaries. "Xiao! Hu! Bang! Hu! Ah!" Chapter 36-54. Du Fan and Wei Feng, who'd come over, stood nearby and watched. When they saw those mercenaries actually dared to provoke Luo Yu and even insult him, they couldn't help but laugh with ridicule. These people are really courting death. With Luo Yu's strength, these people still dared to provoke him. Weren't they courting death? As he watched them being blasted flying by the wind from Luo Yu's palm, Du Fan called out to Luo Yu, "Take it and leave. Master is still waiting." "I know," Luo Yu replied and walked forward. He opened up the eagle's claw that was wrapped in black cloth and glanced at it before putting it away in his spatial ring. When he turned around and walked towards them, a mercenary held onto his aching chest and fiercely stabbed his blade towards Luo Yu. "I'll fucking kill you," that person shouted. But he hadn't even approached when his entire body was blasted flying by the wind from Luo Yu's palm, and he smashed heavily onto a tree. Pooh! A mouthful of blood sprayed out, and that mercenary twitched a few times before taking his last breath. Luo Yu's gaze went cold as he stared at the dead mercenary, and then he swept his gaze towards the other mercenaries. "There's still anyone else that's courting death, right? I can send all of you down to gather together." "Yes, we had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Young master, please spare us this time." One of the mercenaries spoke hurriedly as he retreated. "Fuck off." Luo Yu shouted coldly, and his pressure assaulted out along with this cold shout. When those mercenaries heard this, they felt as if they'd been granted amnesty, and they scrambled away right away. Du Fan and Wei Feng glanced at him and said, "There are traces of blood on you. It's better to clean yourself up before returning to the flying ship." Master feels slightly nauseous when he smells the smell of blood now. Luo Yu paused for a moment when he heard this, and he saw that some blood had really splashed onto his body. He didn't know if it was from slashing the eagle's claw earlier or the blood of those mercenaries. Thus, he looked at the surroundings and said, "There seems to be no water source in the surroundings." "There is. There should be a spring 50 meters to the left from here." Wei Feng smiled as he gestured for Luo Yu to clean himself up, and then he said, "We won't wait any longer. Come up after you've changed your clothes." "All right," Luo Yu replied, before walking towards the place Wei Feng spoke of. Sure enough, he saw a small spring hidden within the weeds, and he immediately undid his clothes and washed it simply. On the spaceship, Feng Jiu looked at the amount of medicine Fan Lin was about to add and hurriedly said, "Wait." Fan Lin looked at her and asked nervously, "Mistress, is there something wrong?" One had to know that in such a short period of time, the medicine that had been concocted previously was wasted because of his mistakes in the steps. This was already the second batch of medicine. Seeing how nervous he was, Feng Jiu smiled. "It's too much. Just put in 2/3 of it, and you can't add it all at once. You have to add it in 3 batches. You have to grind the medicine as you add it." "All right." He exhaled softly, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and carefully followed her instructions to mix the ingredients. "Master, Luo Yu is coming back." Du Fan walked over with a smile, and Wei Feng followed beside him. Feng Jiu replied and said, "Wait for Fan Lin to finish concocting these pills before leaving. You two rest." "Yes." The two of them replied and sat down at the side. Chapter 3655. Not bad. The taste is very pure. As she spoke, she put the pill in her mouth and swallowed it. When it entered her mouth, she felt a cool and sweet taste, as if the taste of 100 flowers had spread in her mouth, instantly making her feel comfortable. Seeing her eat the pill, Fan Lin also picked one up and smelled it. He also tasted one and felt that the taste in his mouth did not feel like he was eating a pill. Instead, it tasted like candy. He could not help but ask, "Master, this pill was made with over 10 different kinds of spiritual herbs. Finally, it was made with ice-congealed flour and 100 fragrant honey. It has a refreshing taste and is like medicine, but not medicine. What special effects does it have?" He naturally recognized those herbs separately. Among the 10 or so herbs, there were some spiritual herbs that could stabilize the fetus. However, this pill was not a normal fetus-stabilizing medicine. Moreover, although the 10 or so herbs were not hard to find, it could be said that the steps of refining and the accuracy of the ingredients were very precise. If it were not for her guidance, he would not have been able to make it. This pill can stop morning sickness, and it can stabilize the fetus. It can also stabilize the body. In short, it is suitable for pregnant women to use. She smiled and looked at him, asking, "Have you memorized the steps and dosage?" Fan Lin was in a daze from listening to her words. When he heard her ask if he had memorized the refining method, he quickly replied, "This subordinate has memorized it. Then refine some more. Just refine according to the previous standard. I'm tired, so I'll go in and sleep for a while. When Luo Yu comes back, we'll leave." She sat up with a yawn and walked into the cabin. Fan Lin prepared the spiritual herbs he needed and continued to refine the pill. Although these 10 or so spiritual herbs were not 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs, they were still very precious. This kind of medicine that could stabilize the fetus and stop morning sickness was something that only his master had the ability to use. Even if other people were willing to take out these spiritual herbs, they would not be able to refine it. Not long after, Luo Yu walked into the airship in a refreshed manner. He grinned at everyone. "I'm back. Where's Master?" He looked at the airship and did not see Feng Jiu's figure. Master said he was tired and went to sleep for a while. "What's wrong?" Do you need Master for something? He's asleep. Okay. Chin Xian, take these strawberries and wash them. When Master wakes up, he can eat them. Luo Yu took out a large plate of strawberries from his space and handed it to Chin Xian. Okay. Chin Xian answered with a smile. She didn't ask any more questions after receiving it and went to wash it. You picked it down there? I was wondering why you took so long to change your clothes. It turns out that you went to pick wild raspberries. Du Fan smiled and said, but it just so happens that Master doesn't have much of an appetite during this period of time. He's probably tired of eating all sorts of spiritual fruits. Trying these wild raspberries from the mountain forest would be a good idea. Luo Yu grinned and said, I was thinking that Master didn't have much of an appetite these days. I also saw that there were a lot of these strawberries beside the spring, so I picked them for Master to eat as snacks. As he spoke, he glanced at Fan Lin, who was seriously developing the medicine. He lifted his chin slightly and asked, why is he making medicine? Oh, it's the medicine that Master asked him to make. He said it can be used to stabilize the fetus. As Du Fan spoke, he saw that Lung Hua and Hui Lang had already started flying the airship. As the airship slowly moved and flew over the forest, everyone sat down and chatted. Chapter 3656. Master, you're awake? The food is just ready. We can eat now. Chin Xian said with a smile when she saw her get up. Feng Jiu looked around and saw that the spaceship had landed in the forest. Other than Chin Xian and Lung Shuang on the spaceship, everyone else was busy by the fire outside the spaceship. What are they doing? Feng Jiu asked. She walked closer and saw that they seemed to be cooking. Seeing this scene, she couldn't help but be slightly surprised, especially when she saw Du Fan and the others rolling up their sleeves and cooking. She revealed a smile. Everyone saw that the sky was dark, so they stopped the spaceship and found some wild vegetables in the surroundings. Chin Xian said softly, we all brought things to cook, so everyone said that it was better to cook some rice and stir-fry some vegetables to eat. Master, look, they prepared everything here. Feng Jiu looked over and saw that there were 7 or 8 dishes on the table at the bow of the ship. She walked over and saw that the wild vegetables Chin Xian mentioned were some matsutake and the like. They also made soup. It should be some wild game that they went to catch. There were meat and vegetables, and the soup was very sumptuous. Master, there's no porridge for dinner tonight. Eat some rice later or drink some soup. These days, you've only been eating porridge, and I didn't see you eat much. Just now, everyone said that Master has lost a lot of weight. Hearing this, Feng Jiu smiled. It looks very appetizing. I think I'll eat more tonight. She sat down at the table and said to Chin Xian, tell them to come up and eat when they're done. Otherwise, the food will get cold later. Yes. Chin Xian responded, got off the spaceship, and walked towards everyone. Beside the fire, the fragrance of food spread. Wei Feng turned over the fried meat on the iron plate and asked, is your side done? My fried meat is almost done. It's done, it's done. Du Fan also responded. He wiped his sweat with his sleeves, scooped up the meat in the pot, put on a plate, and handed it to Chin Xian, who came over. Here, bring it up. Chin Xian took it and said to everyone, Master, since you've agreed, let's all go up and eat, lest the food gets cold. When everyone heard this, they grinned. That's good. We'll go up in a while. Let the Master eat first. Dish after dish was served on the flying ship. Gu Mo and Ing, who were guarding the surroundings, glanced at the ferocious beasts that were eyeing them covetously, but did not dare to approach. Then, they indifferently shifted their gazes away. Due to the fact that they had to cook in order to avoid being disrupted, they released the pressure from their bodies. Their powerful pressure almost enveloped the surroundings, which was why the ferocious beasts did not dare to take half a step closer. Otherwise, when night fell and darkness enveloped the earth, those ferocious beasts would naturally not let go of such a good opportunity to hunt. Let's go eat. Let the fire burn for now. Du Fan said. After washing the food and putting it away, he wiped his hands and walked towards the flying ship. The others also washed the food and put away. Then, they carried the freshly cooked dishes onto the flying ship. The tables were joined together, and everyone sat in a circle. It looked very lively. Master, try this stir-fried matsutake spirit beast meat. I stir-fried it myself. Master, try this soup first. I made it. Master, I made this fried meat. It's also delicious. Master. Chapter 36:57. Looking at the food in her bowl, Fengzhou didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She looked at everyone and said helplessly, "All right, don't help me. You guys can eat." Everyone looked at each other and laughed. They didn't help her get more food, but started to pick up their chopsticks. They drank a little wine, ate the dishes, and were very relaxed. The air was filled with the mouth-watering aroma of food. Even the people from the family clans who were some distance away felt that it was incredible when they smelled the aroma of food in the air. "Why do I smell the aroma of food?" A man said and sniffed hard. The more he smelled, the more fragrant it was and the hungrier he felt. The aroma of food? How can it be? Where's this place? How can it be the aroma of food? It should be the aroma of meat. It's hard to find food, but there should be a lot of barbecued meat here. Another person said, and indeed smelled the aroma in the air. It's really the aroma of food. Who has such ability? Could it be that they're cooking here? There are many ferocious beasts in this place, and there are many mythical beasts. Cooking here? That's simply courting death. But I really smell the aroma of food. We've been out for a few months and haven't eaten rice or vegetables for a few months. It's either dry food or barbecued meat every day. Now that I smell the barbecued meat, I'm already full. Me too. I've been eating barbecued meat for a few months. I guess I won't eat barbecued meat for a long time when I go back. How good would it be if I had a bowl of hot soup to drink now? Don't think about it. Who would bring a pot and ladle the cooked soup when they go out, especially to a place like this? It's good enough to stay alive in this place. Everyone was talking and discussing. They were eating dry food in their hands, but now, smelling the aroma of food in the air, they couldn't eat the dry food in their hands. "I'm going to relieve myself." A man stood up and said. "I'll go too," another person said. The two of them looked at each other and walked behind a big tree together. However, the two of them couldn't suppress the curiosity in their hearts. So, they wanted to take a look at where the aroma of food came from. In such a dangerous place, could there really be someone cooking here with pots and pans? After waiting for a while and seeing that the two of them didn't return, the people who were discussing couldn't help but look at each other and whisper, "The two of them couldn't have gone to take a look, right?" "Probably. How is this relieving? How long has he been gone? Do they not want to live anymore? How dare the two of them run around in the middle of the night? They must be tired of living." I'm curious. What could he do if he couldn't suppress his curiosity? Don't tell me you're not curious. I'm very curious about where this fragrance came from, but I won't go to see it at night. What if I encounter a ferocious beast? These two people are really... This won't do. I have to report this to the patriarch. While the crowd was talking, two men on the other side lightened their footsteps and restrained their auras as they leaped onto the tree branches in search of the aroma of the food. However, when they saw a pair of cold and bloodthirsty eyes staring at a certain spot in the dark night, they couldn't help but be so shocked that their hair stood on end. Hiss! Why are there so many ferocious beasts surrounding that place? Chapter 36:58. Why are they staring at the front? There are too many trees and weeds. I can't see clearly. There seems to be a bonfire, but why don't I see anyone? The other person said. Because their line of sight was blocked by the weeds and branches, they couldn't see the scene in front of them. The curiosity in their hearts made them forget about the danger, and they couldn't help but jump forward. When they got closer, they immediately felt the powerful pressure in the air, and when they felt that pressure, the two of them couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. What a powerful pressure! This person must be very strong, one of them said, and looked forward with all his might, wanting to see who was releasing this pressure in front of them. One of them couldn't help but jump a little higher. Because he was standing high, his line of sight became better, and when he looked back, he could see the scene in front of him clearly. It seems to be a spaceship, and there are more than 10 people eating around it. On this side, the two of them were staring at Fengjiu and the others on the spaceship, but they didn't know that Fengjiu and the others had noticed them the moment they approached. The two people on the tree over there are quite bold, daring to come close with so many vicious beasts around. Du Fan took a sip of wine and glanced at the two figures on the tree not far away from him from the corner of his eyes. Even if the two of them were hiding in the big tree, and the lush branches and leaves blocked their figures, the pressure and divine sense surrounding them made it easy for them to sense someone approaching. Du Fan and the others were drinking wine and chatting when suddenly a cry of alarm sounded, breaking the silence of the night. With a cry of alarm, one of the men standing on the tree swung his hand, and something seemed to fly out of his hand, and he lost his balance and fell to the ground. Roar! A bloodthirsty roar was heard as several ferocious beasts pounced on the man who had fallen to the ground. One of the ferocious beasts pounced forward and bit the man's leg. In an instant, the smell of blood filled the air. Not good. The other man on the tree was scared silly. When he saw the man's leg being bitten by the vicious beast, he immediately pulled out his sword and stabbed at the vicious beast below. Let him go. As he shouted, the sword chi slashed down. However, how could the two of them deal with a divine beast-level vicious beasts? Moreover, there was more than one divine beast around. It hurts. Let me go. Let me go. Save me. Save me. Hiss. The other man who rushed down to save her was hit by a ferocious beast. He felt as if his bones were about to break, and the pain caused him to suck in a breath of cold air. However, even though his body was in pain, he didn't dare to let go of the sword in his hand. Instead, he injected spiritual power into his sword and swung it around. Go away! Go away! He slashed at the ferocious beast that had bitten the man. However, the ferocious beast pulled the man back in order to avoid the attack. The sharp teeth pierced through the man's flesh and bone, causing the man's face to lose all color as he screamed in pain. Mother, mother, I'm in so much pain that his voice gradually weakened. Blood flowed all over the ground, and the smell of blood in the air became more and more intense. Chapter 36:59. In the darkness of the night, even though she was still a distance away, she could clearly see the two men on the ground, covered in blood and crying out in pain from the beast's mouth. The two men, who were already in a desperate situation, did not look very old. At this moment, they were covered in blood and their lives were hanging by a thread. She did not want to pay any attention to irrelevant people who had snuck in here to observe them. However, perhaps it was the dying cry of one of the men, "Mother, I'm in so much pain." It had touched her heart for no reason, causing her to feel a trace of pity. She watched as the surrounding ferocious beasts bared their fangs and surrounded them. She watched as the ferocious beast that had bitten the man was about to use all its strength to tear his leg off. Just as it was about to bite off his leg, an ancient and oppressive voice rang out coldly and directly towards the group of ferocious beasts. Retreat. That one word was cold and powerful, as if it had come from ancient times. A powerful force that could be seen with the naked eye formed the word retreat and landed in the middle of the group of ferocious beasts. The ferocious beasts were so shocked that they let go of their jaws and quickly retreated, not daring to stay for even a moment. Those ferocious beasts had been hiding and watching them for an entire night, as if they had been waiting for an opportunity. However, at this moment, because of the powerful ancient and oppressive word retreat, each and every one of them fled in fright, disappearing without a trace. As the ferocious beasts fled, the two men on the ground lay motionless. If it were not for the slight rise and fall of their chests, one would have thought that they were already dead. Chung Jun, Chung Lin, where are you? The call came from not too far away. Listening to the chaotic sound of footsteps, there should be quite a number of people here. Feng Jiu calmly retracted his gaze and picked up a piece of meat to eat, then drank a bowl of soup. Clearly, his appetite was not bad. Just as they were eating, those people came looking for them. Naturally, They also found the two men lying on the ground on their last breaths. Chung Jun, Chung Lin. When everyone saw the state of the two of them, they couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. They hurriedly helped them up and took out a medicinal pill and quickly fed it to them. Why are they so badly injured? Did they encounter a ferocious beast? Hiss. These injuries. Even the older man couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air when he saw the flesh torn open by the beast's bite. Everyone surrounded the two of them and questioned them. A middle-aged man in the middle glanced around and frowned slightly when his gaze landed on the spaceship. He didn't expect that there would be someone here. Moreover, that person was sitting on an airship. To be able to use an airship in such a place and cook here, one could see how powerful that person was. However, a person with such great strength was also a cold-blooded and heartless person. He watched as the two people were torn apart by the ferocious beasts and did not help. At this moment, he hadn't thought about how those ferocious beasts would have retreated if they hadn't made a move. If it wasn't for them, how could those two have lasted until they arrived? Compared to the extreme actions of this middle-aged man, the other middle-aged man who helped them check their wounds secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He instructed the person beside him, help them stop the bleeding and bandage their wounds first. Yes, Patriarch. Everyone responded and began to bandage the two men's wounds. Chapter 3660. Thank you, everyone, for your help. I can't thank you enough. A voice that contained spirit energy sounded out from his mouth, and it was clearly transmitted into the ears of Fengjiu and the others. Fengjiu curled his lips when he heard this and watched that person cup his hand from afar, but he didn't say anything. It was good that they knew how to be grateful. There were many people who didn't know how to be grateful even if they helped. Patriarch, why are you thanking them? If they really wanted to save them, they wouldn't have waited until Chung Jun and Chung Feng were bitten to such an extent before making a move. The middle-aged man's voice contained anger, and he didn't feel that the group of people had helped them at all. Shut up. Patriarch Mu frowned and shouted in a deep voice, and his fierce and dignified gaze swept past the middle-aged man. Stand down. The middle-aged man was slightly embarrassed when he was shouted at in public, and a wisp of gloominess flashed through his eyes when he heard such a warning. He gritted his teeth and forcefully suppressed the rage in his heart. Then he snorted coldly and retreated to the side without saying another word. However, his furious gaze still stared fixedly at Fengjiu and the others. Everyone, it's my fault for not being strict enough. Please don't blame us. We'll be taking our leave first. He bowed apologetically to Fengjiu and the others before leaving with everyone. As he watched them leave, Dufan glanced at them and said, "It's not that Patriarch Mu isn't strict enough, but he's unable to see through people. Something will probably happen sooner or later if he brings such a person with him in this forest where ferocious beasts run rampant. If something happens, it's someone else's problem. What does it have to do with us?" Wei Feng scoffed. They weren't kind-hearted people. Since they came to a place like this, they had to be prepared to bear the consequences. What was the use of asking for help when they encountered danger? After all, it was better to rely on oneself than to rely on others. Come, let's continue drinking." As Du Fan spoke, he raised the wine cup in his hand and clinked it with Wei Feng's, and then he said with a smile, "We can't drink too much outside, so it's fine to finish this jug of wine." Fengjiu looked at everyone's relaxed appearance and couldn't help but reveal a smile. She drank half a bowl of soup and said to everyone, "I'm full, you guys can continue." He got up and went to lie down on the soft couch at the side. He looked at the sky in the forest. The sky was dotted with stars, and it looked extremely peaceful. However, he did not know that under such a peaceful night, there were many dangers lurking. On the other side, after those people carried the people back, they strengthened the security around the area and set up barriers and formations to prevent danger from descending in the night. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man looked at their patriarch and said angrily, "Patriarch, those people clearly didn't lend a hand, so why are you thanking them?" They watched helplessly as Chung Jun and Chung Yu were torn to shreds by the ferocious beasts. How could such people be kind-hearted? The Mu family had glanced at him and said in a deep voice, "If it weren't for them, do you think the two of them would have survived? It's a fact that they lent a hand, and we ought to thank them. After all, saving them was their benevolence, and not saving them was a matter of course. After all, they aren't anyone to us, and they don't owe us anything." When he heard this, the middle-aged man was speechless for a short while, yet he felt his belly full of rage had nowhere to vent. What benevolence and righteousness! Since they wanted to save them, why didn't they save them earlier? Since they didn't want to save them, why didn't they just watch coldly from the sidelines? Chapter 36:61. Hearing this, the middle-aged man lowered his gaze and covered the gloominess in his eyes. "Sup, a good position? Huh. Our mission for this trip has been completed. Originally, there were 60 or 70 people, but now there are only 40 people left. Our losses can be considered heavy. Now, there are 2 more seriously injured people. We have to be more careful on the way back." Family Head Moose said to everyone in a deep voice. "Family Head, they used a spaceship. Can't we use a spaceship? If we use a spaceship, we should be able to get out of this forest faster." He heard the people below whispering. Family Head Moo glanced at that person, then looked at the crowd. Seeing that their eyes were full of anticipation, he sighed softly and said, "This forest is called the Desolate Ominous Land, not only because there are extremely powerful divine beasts in this forest, but also because very few people dare to fly in the sky above this forest, even if they use a spaceship." He walked slowly with his hands clasped behind his back and continued, "The number of flying mythological beasts in the sky is no less than the number in the forest. There are also trees in the forest to provide shelter. If you go to the sky, you will directly expose yourself to danger. Who can guarantee that you will be safe and sound under such circumstances?" Hearing this, everyone looked at each other and asked, "Family Head, does that mean that the people we met on the spaceship before are very strong and powerful? They seem to be only a dozen people, and they all look very old. 4 of them are women." Family Head Moo looked at them and nodded. "Yes, although I don't know how strong they are, but to be able to be so relaxed in such a dangerous place, it can be seen that they are not ordinary people. You have to remember that in such a dangerous place, in addition to guarding against the beasts, powerful cultivators are also not to be trifled with." "Yes, Family Head, we will remember." Everyone agreed, remembering his words in their hearts, because it was very likely that this would be their experience when they survived in the future. Bang! Roar! Roar! Suddenly, a loud sound was heard as the formation was activated. Following that, the roars of ferocious beasts could be heard. Hearing that sound, everyone quickly became alert. "It's a beast. Not good. Patriarch, a divine beast is broken through our array." "Family Head, the barrier we set up was broken by a divine beast." "Family Head, there are more than 2 beasts around, but more than 10 of them, and several of them are divine beasts." For a moment, the scene was chaotic. When they heard that there were more than 1 or 2 beasts, and many of them were divine beasts, their faces could not help but become dignified. It was not easy for them to survive along the way, but they had always been cautious. Even when they encountered a beast attack, there were no more than 2 beasts at most, but now, hearing the roars of the ferocious beasts around them, everyone's heart sank. They felt that it would be difficult for them to survive this time. Chapter 36:62. When everyone heard their patriarch's words, they calmed down one by one. They did as he said, and saw their patriarch quickly set up 3 arrays around them. As the arrays were set up, a burst of thick smoke filled the air, hiding their figures in the arrays. They only felt that their backs were leaning against each other. The thick smoke was so thick that they couldn't even see who was leaning against them. However, no one moved. They all held their breath and didn't dare to breathe. The air seemed to have been sprinkled with some kind of medicine by their patriarch. It was so pungent that even the smell of blood was covered up. Those ferocious beasts gathered around, only to see that the fire had been extinguished. Only smoke filled the air. The smell in the air was so pungent that they couldn't help but snort and growl when they smelled it. There was not a single person in sight, nor was there the slightest aura. Even though they were charging all over the place, they did not bump into anyone. Seeing this, the ferocious beasts felt bored, thinking that those people had left while they were charging in. But they didn't know that the patriarch of the Mu family had set up the 9 bends maze array. No matter how those ferocious beasts rushed around, they only circled around to the outer circle. They didn't break into the middle point where they were standing. In addition, the fog was spreading, blocking everyone's line of sight. Everyone's breath was also restrained. How could these ferocious beasts find their existence? Because they heard the ferocious beasts roaring around, but they didn't come close to them. Everyone's heart gradually relaxed. They felt that they should be able to avoid this disaster. Not only the people of the Mu family thought so, even the patriarch of the Mu family felt that it shouldn't be difficult to avoid this disaster. However, he didn't expect that there was a pair of eyes that had been staring at him since he set up the array. Even if his position couldn't be seen in the thick smoke, the position where he was standing before the thick smoke completely covered was known by the pair of eyes that had been staring at him. So, the owner of the pair of eyes quietly stretched out his hand and pushed the person in front of him out with the help of the thick smoke. Ah! A cry of surprise rang out. No one knew what had happened. Only the person who was pushed out knew that a pair of hands had pushed him from behind, causing him to fall forward and fall into the 9 bends maze formation. Banger! Even if he didn't see who the person who fell out was, the patriarch of the Mu family heard the voice of his son. He couldn't care about anything else. When he was about to go out to save him, a pair of hands suddenly pushed him out. Ooh! The angry Mu family head grabbed the man's hand. Because of his great strength, his hand scratched the man's hand until it bled. However, at this time, the other party lifted his foot and kicked him away. The sound of clothes tearing apart resounded in everyone's ears. The Mu family head fell into the 9 bends maze array. But because they heard the commotion, the ferocious beasts that were about to leave opened their mouths and let out a low roar. They fiercely pounced towards the source of the commotion. Chapter 3663. Go back. Find those who are disloyal. Everyone was stunned when they heard this, and their hearts couldn't help but tremble. Their patriarch, Dada, a miserable cry came from the 9 bends maze formation, and it caused everyone's hearts to tighten. But not long after, they heard the sound getting further and further away from them, and even the ferocious beasts were chasing after the sound. On the other side, Fengjiu, who had eaten his fill, was lying on the soft couch and eating the wild berries that Luo Yu had picked. The sweet and sour taste was mixed with a fresh smell, and it was very delicious. He said to Qin Xian, "Let them have a taste." "Master, you eat." "We don't want to eat." Du Fan smiled at her and said, "We often eat these wild berries when we're outside, and we're tired of them." "Master, I'm not tired of them. Leave some for me." Wei Feng grinned and glanced at Du Fan, then looked at Luo Yu and said with a smile, "They were picked by Luo Yu, so we have to have a taste." "Yes, let's have a taste. It's quite sweet," Fengjiu said with a smile and asked Qin Xian to share some with them. When he heard the roars of ferocious beasts coming from not far away, he couldn't help but be slightly surprised. Strange, why are there still the roars of ferocious beasts? Could it be that those people from before went to provoke those ferocious beasts again? Those ferocious beasts probably targeted those people after they left here. Yes, there are a few dozen of them there, but if they were targeted by those ferocious beasts, it would probably be very difficult for them to survive. Everyone drank as they spoke. The surroundings were pitch black, and they couldn't see anything. However, they could faintly hear the sounds of battle and ferocious beasts. They originally didn't want to pay attention to it, but they didn't expect that after a while, 2 blood-stained figures would rush into the place where their pressure was pervading. It was also because they had entered here that the ferocious beasts that were chasing them relentlessly surrounded and stared at them. They let out low roars as if they were unwilling to leave just like that. But when they saw the people on the spaceship, they had no choice but to turn around and leave. There are actually only 2 people? And you even know to come here? Wei Feng looked with surprise at the 2 people that sat limply on the ground. Both of them were covered in blood, and it was already impossible to discern the original color of their clothes. But the appearance of the middle-aged man was still reflected in the eyes of everyone. "Master, it's that family head surnamed Mu," Lung Hua said gently. Before Fingjiu could say anything, Du Fan sneered. "What did you say just now? Look, it came true so quickly. Looks like his injuries aren't light. He can't even sit still." As Lung Hua spoke, his gaze fell on the two tottering figures. As soon as he finished speaking, one of them fainted. "Fan Lin, go take a look," Feng Jiu ordered while eating a strawberry. "Yes." Fan Lin responded, got up, and walked down to the two people's side. He saw that family head Mu was stuffing medicinal pills into the mouth of the unconscious man and helping him bandage his wounds. His own wounds were bleeding nonstop, and his injuries weren't light, but he didn't take care of them. "Family head Mu, we meet again." Fan Lin revealed a refined smile. Family head Mu looked at the refined man in front of him, then looked at the people on the spaceship before nodding at him. "Sorry to disturb you again." Chapter 36-64. Hearing this, Patriarch Mu couldn't help but be startled. He looked at the people on the spaceship and didn't know which one of them was the master he was talking about. However, in this situation, they were willing to help, and he was more than happy to do so. Immediately, he thanked him. "In that case, this Mu will thank you in advance." Fan Lin helped him to the fire next to their spaceship and let the unconscious man lie down by the fire, then said, "I'll help him clean his wound first. Here is a bottle of hemostatic medicine. You use it first, and I'll bandage it for you later." "I have hemostatic medicine. There's no need." Before he finished speaking, he saw Fan Lin smile. "Your medicine is different from mine." Patriarch Mu was slightly startled. He only felt that this man's smile was full of confidence. He looked down at the medicine bottle in his hand and finally didn't refuse. He just thanked him. "Thank you." He sprinkled the medicine on the wound on his arm and saw that the bleeding stopped in an instant. The speed of hemostasis surprised him slightly, and he looked at the elegant man in disbelief. He skillfully cleaned his son's wound. After the bloody wound was cleaned, he sprinkled some medicine to stop the bleeding. Just like him, the bleeding stopped immediately. Young master is a pharmacist. He couldn't help but ask. This man had a faint medicinal fragrance, and his treatment of the wound was skillful. The hemostatic medicine was even more miraculous. If he was a pharmacist, his rank wouldn't be low. After all, Patriarch Mu had never seen such a fast hemostatic medicine. "Well, you can say that," Fan Lin responded. After treating the man's wound, he helped the Mu family's patriarch with his wounds and asked, "Why were you alone? We heard the roar of the fierce beasts, and you provoked them?" Hearing this, Patriarch Mu smiled bitterly. "Not long after we went back, we encountered fierce beasts besieging the place where we stayed, but I set up a spirit array and barrier there, so there was time to react, so he roughly explained the situation to him, and finally smiled bitterly. I just didn't expect that there would be someone in my family with disloyal intentions. He took advantage of the thick smoke and pushed my son into the 9 bends maze formation. I wanted to save him, but I was pushed out as well. In order to survive, I could only bring my son and escape here. Sure enough, those ferocious beasts didn't dare to come close. He wanted to try his luck, but he didn't expect to survive because of this. If it wasn't for the fact that they weren't far from here, they wouldn't have just been injured, they would have lost their lives." Hearing this, Fan Lin smiled. "In my opinion, that person should have wanted to push you, not your son." The Mu family head was startled. Looking at the smile on his face, he couldn't help but ponder for a while. Being reminded by him, he thought about it again, and his heart sank. That's right, that person should have wanted to push and harm him. In the thick smoke, he had protected his son to his original position while he stood beside him. If that person wanted to harm his son, he wouldn't have attacked again after hearing his voice. However, who would want to harm him? Why would they want to harm him? Now that the father and son were out, how were the clansmen? Chapter 36-65. Hearing this, family head Mu was a little surprised, but he still said, "This is the savage wilderness ominous land." Because this land is extremely vast, and there are layers of mountains and forests, there are fewer people who can walk out of here. People from aristocratic families, like you, all have a teleportation array here. As long as you find the array, you can leave here. It's more convenient. His voice paused, looked at them, and said, if you go out in a spaceship, it will take at least half a month, and at most a month to leave this area. Then which sovereign is in charge of this place? Fan Lin asked. Hearing this, family head Mu was basically sure that they were not from here. Perhaps they came from other regions. Thinking of this, his expression was inquisitive and strange. He said, our land is called the Nine Profound Heavens Realm. It doesn't belong to any sovereign. Moreover, as far as I know, people from other regions can't come to our land. Nine Profound Heavens Realm? In other words, you don't have a sovereign here? Fan Lin was slightly surprised. The spiritual aura in this place was extremely rich, but there was no sovereign in charge of this place. Yes, we don't have a sovereign here. It's not that no one is watching over this land, but no one can control the Nine Profound Heavens Realm. Here, the sovereigns of other regions can't spread their divine senses throughout the land, and they can't open the connection between this place and other lands. So, he looked at Fan Lin and hesitated. What did you come here? Hearing this, Fan Lin's eyes flashed, and he smiled. I see. He looked at family head Mu with a smile, but did not answer his question. Instead, he said, you all rest here first. As he said that, he let them sit by the fire and went to the spaceship himself. Master! Fan Lin came to Fengjiu's side and briefly told him what he had learned from family head Mu. Oh, at least half a month? It seems that this place is really not small. Fengjiu ate a strawberry and thought with some doubts in his heart. An ownerless land? The aura of spiritual power in this area was extremely dense, yet there was no monarch in charge. However, after thinking about it carefully, he nodded and said, that's true. This place is indeed different from other places. Back then, it wasn't difficult to travel between sovereign Tongtian's territory and the place where we are. After all, the world is vast, and the territories are vast. As long as one's strength reaches a certain level, one can naturally come and go freely in the territories of the various sovereigns. However, this place, the Nine Profound Heavens Realm, I don't seem to have heard of such a place. If it weren't for that mirror, we wouldn't have come to this place. However, since we're here, I feel that there must be something I need in this world. Master, that Mu family head said that their family has a teleportation formation here. Should we borrow their formation to leave this place? Fan Lin inquired. Fengjiu shook his head with a smile. No need. It's only half a month. There's no need to rush. Go on your own. I could take a look around. Yes. Fengjiu rested his chin on one hand and thought for a moment, then said, did you ask Patriarch Mu what he plans to do next? His subordinate didn't ask. Du Fan. Fengjiu called out. Master. Du Fan came forward. Chapter 36-66. Hearing this, although they were a little surprised, they did not ask further. Instead, they responded and walked down from the flying ship. On the other side, due to the departure of the ferocious beasts, the people of the Mu family gradually walked out of the formation. However, they could no longer see the figures of their master and eldest young master. The atmosphere became oppressive and solemn. They lowered their heads slightly, and no one spoke. 30 to 40 people stood there with sorrowful expressions. They felt that the master and eldest young master had most likely met with a tragic end. Forget about the two of them. Even if they came out together, they would not be able to fight against so many ferocious beasts. Furthermore, there were several divine beasts among the ferocious beasts. Do you think that the master and eldest young master, are they still alive? Someone asked with a glimmer of hope. The master is such a good person. He must be blessed by the heavens. That's right. The master must still be alive. The patriarch asked us to find out who was disloyal. At that time, someone must have pushed the patriarch and the eldest young master to their deaths. One of the old men said in a low voice. His gaze swept across everyone. Who was it? Who was it? Stand up and go back. Perhaps we can let you go. However, if we find the culprit, then you'll be punished even more." In the crowd, the middle-aged man's eyes flickered. He looked at everyone and seemed to be guessing who the culprit was. At that moment, he also remained silent. At that time, I was closer to the master. I heard the sound of clothes being torn. As long as we investigate, we can find out who did it. Now, I'll give you one last chance. Stand up. The old man was an elder of the Move family. At this moment, he shouted again. Everyone stared at each other, as if they wanted to see whose clothes were torn. However, at this moment, a cold glint flashed across the middle-aged man's eyes. He strode forward and angrily pointed at the old man. "Third elder, you were the one who pushed the master and the others out, weren't you? You still dare to question the others here? You killed the master. What are your intentions?" Hearing this, the people of the Move family were stunned. The third elder killed the master? How could that be? You're slandering me. Third elder was so angry that his face flushed red. When he saw that the sleeve of the middle-aged man was missing a corner, he couldn't help but widen his eyes. "It's you. It was you who pushed the patriarch. You're the one who killed patriarch and the others. Your sleeve is missing a piece. This is the best proof." With a piece of his sleeve torn, he couldn't block it even if he wanted to, and he couldn't change his clothes either. Thus, he didn't plan to hide it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have pointed his finger at the third elder and let him see the torn part of his sleeve. When he heard the third elder's words, he harumphed angrily. "Ridiculous! We've been in here for so long, whose clothes are still intact. Look at everyone, whose clothes aren't torn or chipped. If I really did make a move against the patriarch and the others, would I still use this hand with a missing sleeve to identify you? You beat me in my own game. Other than you, who else here would dare to make a move on the patriarch? Who dares to make a move against the patriarch?" The third elder said angrily. Chapter 36:67. "You're slandering me. It was you who did it." Seeing the two of them quarreling, everyone in the Move family could not help but look at each other. What was going on? Why were they quarreling? Seeing that their quarrel was getting more and more intense, as if they were about to fight, someone advised, "Third elder, don't quarrel. We don't know whether the master and the rest are alive or dead, and we haven't returned to the family yet. It's not right to quarrel now." "That's right. We'll definitely find the person who secretly harmed the master, but we can't just wrongly accuse a good person." "That's right." Hearing the crowd's words, the two of them stopped quarreling, but their expressions did not look too good. "Everyone, follow me and search the surroundings. See if you can find the master and the rest." As third elder spoke, he asked everyone to get ready and search the surroundings. After all, even if they were dead, it was impossible for them to not leave anything behind. It's late at night. Those ferocious beasts might not have gone far, and you want everyone to search for them? You want everyone to die?" The middle-aged man scoffed coldly, obviously disagreeing. "I want to find the master and the rest. Maybe they're waiting for us to save them." Third elder was trembling with anger. He finally saw through this vile person. "If you want to go by yourself. I won't go and die for nothing." The middle-aged man said coldly, glancing at the crowd. "If any of you want to follow third elder to search, then go. But don't blame me for not warning you when you end up in the mouths of those ferocious beasts." Hearing this, those who wanted to follow third elder to search hesitated. It was late at night. If those ferocious beasts had not come near, then if they searched the surroundings now, wouldn't it be "Third elder, I'll go with you to find the master and the eldest young master." A man stood out and walked to third elder's side with a sullen face. No matter who had secretly harmed the master and the eldest young master, the most important thing now was to find the master. "Third elder, I'll go too." Another man stood out as well. We'll go too. After one person stood out, more people stood out. Gradually, among the 34 people, only a few were injured and a few who did not move. The rest decided to look for the master and the rest. Seeing this, third elder nodded with gratification. "Good, as expected of a son of the Move family. Come with me." Third elder, When the injured people saw this, they couldn't help but feel anxious. Third elder glanced at them and said, "All of you are injured, so stay here. All right, let them stay behind to protect you. Regardless of whether we can find a patriarch and the others, we will be back before dawn." The middle-aged man looked at this scene with a gloomy expression and did not say anything. He looked at them and watched as third elder led his men away. Only then did he let out a cold snort. Old thing. When the others heard his curse, they couldn't help but lower their heads and pretend that they didn't hear anything. However, the injured people on the ground frowned and said, "Third master, how can you curse third elder? He's a clan elder." Hearing this, the middle-aged man glanced at the man on the ground with a gloomy face and coldly snorted. "What's wrong with me scolding him? Could it be that he was not an old thing? What? You want to protect him? If you want to protect him and stand on his side, why don't you go with him?" Chapter 3668. Third uncle, how can you speak like that? An injured man spoke with a pale face as he stared at his third uncle as though he was a stranger. The middle-aged man glanced at him and said, "Chung Jun, your injuries aren't light at all. You should take care of yourself first. You should know that if you're injured to this extent, you won't be able to make it back alive." Third uncle, you. Mu Chung Jun stared at him in astonishment. "Am I wrong? It's fine if you don't encounter any danger, but if you do, who do you think will protect you who can't even walk?" He swept his cold gaze across the people on the ground and said, "That old thing is taking them to the master. Oomph. I think he's taking them to their deaths." Mu Qingjuan's eyes flashed as he stared at his unfamiliar third uncle and the sinister look on his face. He asked, "Third uncle, you're the one who pushed the master, aren't you? What nonsense are you spouting?" He swept his sharp gaze across the man and raised his sleeve. A gust of wind shot out and slapped the man so hard that half of his face swelled up. Puffed. He was already injured, and after being slapped, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. Chung Jun, third master, how could you lay a hand on Chung Jun? He's your nephew. Huh. The middle-aged man's cold gaze swept across them and said, "Nephew? Would a nephew slander his uncle?" He narrowed his eyes as he stared at them, then looked at the night sky. He swept his gaze across the group who had not spoken and said, "They won't be coming back. Do you intend to leave with me, or stay?" The group of 7 or 8 looked at each other when they heard this. One of them asked, "Third master, what about Chung Jun and the others?" "Them? Huh. Just let them fend for themselves here. Let them wait for that old thing to come back and take them away." The group shivered when they heard this. If they had been suspicious before, they were now certain that the third master was the one who had pushed the master out. When they thought of this, they couldn't help but look at each other. After hesitating for a moment, one of them said, "Third master, I think we should stay behind and guard Chung Jun and the others. They don't have any combat strength now. If we all leave, I'm afraid they won't be able to survive." "That's right, third master. We have to stay," the others said. "Oomph. You don't know what's good for you. If you want to stay, then stay. I want to see how the few of you can survive in here." He flicked his sleeves angrily and walked away in the opposite direction. His figure flashed a few times and disappeared into the night. After seeing him leave, they couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. One of them hesitated for a moment and said, "Do you think the patriarch was really harmed by the third master? He's too different from before and after. I think it's very likely that he's the one who did it." Another person said, Chung Jun, how are you?" A man quickly stepped forward and helped Mu Qingjun up from the ground. "I'm fine," he said with a pale face. Large beads of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. "Do you think the third elder and the others can find the patriarch and the eldest young master? I wonder if the patriarch and the others are still alive?" The group of people said as they stood guard. They kept watch over their surroundings and hoped that the third elder and the others would return soon. Chapter 3669. Patriarch, where are you? Patriarch. Eldest young master. Eldest young master. Where are you? Patriarch Du Fan, who was resting on the other side of the fire, looked at Patriarch Mu and smiled. You're lucky. If you hadn't met my master, it would have been difficult for you to survive. Hearing this, Patriarch Mu showed a smile. It's a blessing for me and my son to be able to meet your master. Indeed, if they hadn't met them, how could they have a chance to survive? I see that you have a lot of injuries. How can you get out of this forest like this? Du Fan gently fanned himself with the fan in his hand, his eyes sweeping over the unconscious man. In fact, my family's transmission point is not very far from here. It only takes a few days to get there, Patriarch Moose said, and then said, the people who came out this time are the top of the family. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to come to the depths of this forest. It's just that we still underestimated the danger here. Du Fan's eyes flashed slightly, and he asked, you came here to gain experience? Regarding this question, Patriarch Mu paused for a moment, then smiled and said, if it was someone else who asked, I wouldn't tell him. However, since you have saved our lives, since you asked, I will tell you frankly. Patriarch Mu looked at Du Fan and said, in fact, we didn't come here to gain experience. Moreover, most people won't come here to gain experience. It's too dangerous, but because of the danger of this place, there are many old elixirs that can't be found outside. Our family came here this time for 3,000-year-old elixirs. Oh, which 3,000-year-old elixirs? An indifferent and somewhat languid voice sounded, causing the Mu family head, who was sitting by the fire, to involuntarily look towards the source of the voice. He saw that on the spaceship that was as bright as day, a beautiful woman in red was standing on the side, looking at them. Although he was a middle-aged man, when he looked at the woman in red at such a close distance, even he was stunned by her beauty for a moment. This is my master. Du Fan's voice came from the side. The Mu family's patriarch recovered, stood up, and saluted Fengjiu on the spaceship. This Mu thanks your excellency for saving me. He was a little surprised. He had seen everyone on the spaceship from afar, but he didn't know which one of them was the master they were talking about. Now, he knew that it was this beautiful woman in red. The woman stood quietly on the spaceship, exuding an elegant and noble aura. Her cold and indifferent eyes on her beautiful face seemed to contain a powerful pressure, making people not dare to look at her directly. She only needed to stand there quietly, and people could feel the aura of an expert that could not be ignored. It's nothing, Fengjiu said lightly. He looked at the Mu family head and said, there are still 1,000-year-old elixirs in this forest. Yes, but it's extremely difficult to find. We searched here for a few months before we found it. While talking, he took out 3 large ice boxes from the space, opened the ice box that stored the elixirs, and presented the 3,000-year-old elixirs in front of Fengjiu and the others. These are the 3,000-year-old elixirs. Chapter 3670. Hearing this, Clan Head Mu laughed. How could that be? Mu Chun, can be considered as a person who has seen a lot of the world. According to my observation, everyone here is a first-class person. How could you put these 3,000-year-old spirit herbs in your eyes? Moreover, the spiritual herbs that the young master took out to help us stop the bleeding are already priceless. You have people from the other side by your side. Why would you covet these 3 spiritual herbs? These people were so extraordinary that even if 3,000-year-old spirit herbs were placed in front of them, he believed that they wouldn't even bat an eye. And from the moment he took out the 3 spirit herbs and presented them to them, it was just as he had guessed. Their expressions remained the same, and they didn't even have half a thought. Seeing this, Fengjiu smiled and asked, what are you going to use these 3 spiritual herbs for? Since they did not hesitate to use such a representative to find these 3 spiritual herbs, they must have an extremely important use. As Clan Head Mu guessed that they were not from this area, he did not find it strange that she asked this question. He smiled and looked at Fengjiu. He explained, we don't have a sovereign in charge of this area. However, we have the 4 major sects and 4 major sects. They are very powerful, and each has its own territory. If you can get their protection, your family will skyrocket and no one will dare to offend you. This time, one of the four major sects, the Soaring Heaven Celestial sect, has a quota of 10 families. Therefore, everyone wants to fight for it. However, the condition to participate is to offer 3 millennium spiritual herbs, so that he did not continue, but Feng Jiao and the others already understood. I see. She nodded in understanding. She felt that the 9 profound heavenly realm was really strange. Instead of relying on those large sects and forces, it was better to strengthen oneself. However, she had not come into contact with anything outside, so it was not good for her to say much. The competition for the 10 families quota of the Soaring Heaven Celestial sect will be very intense. This competition will be a grand occasion. If you have time, you can come to the Soaring Heaven Celestial sect to take a look. As they were talking, they heard a faint call from afar. Clan head Mu could not help but be startled when he heard the call of the clan head. He quickly stood up. It seems that your clansmen have found their way here. Du Fan smiled and looked into the distance, saying, daring to come out in the middle of the night, your clansmen seem pretty decent. The Mu family's patriarch put the 3 spiritual herbs back into his spatial ring and said to Du Fan, the Mu family's customs are strict and everyone in the family is united as one. It's only natural that they would come looking for me. Oh, united as one. Du Fan laughed and glanced at him, as if he was reminding him of something. The Mu family head thought of the culprit who pushed him out to his death, and his face sank. I will definitely find the culprit who did this. The Mu clan absolutely cannot allow such a person to exist. Patriarch, where are you? I'm here. Patriarch Mu shouted in a deep voice. When the person who was searching in the forest suddenly heard the voice, he couldn't help but be startled. I think I heard the Patriarch's voice. I think I heard it too. The sound came from over there. Isn't that where the spaceship is parked? Ah, we are so stupid. Why didn't we look in that direction? If the Patriarch is not dead, maybe he is over there. Chapter 3671. The Mu family head looked at the people coming towards them in the dark and couldn't help but smile. He shouted at them, I'm here. Patriarch. The third elder came over with everyone and was slightly surprised when he saw Feng Jiao and the others. He didn't expect to see them twice in a row tonight. Third elder, is everyone okay? The Mu family head asked. Seeing that only a few people came, it seemed that there were some people who didn't come. He thought that something happened to them. Patriarch, don't worry, everyone is fine. The third elder said. His eyes fell on the Mu family head and the unconscious man and asked, is the eldest young master seriously injured? The medicine has been applied. He just fainted. It's not a big deal. The Mu family head said, and then said to the crowd, we are also lucky. They happened to save us. If they hadn't escaped here, they would have died under the claws of those fierce beasts. Hearing this, the third elder led everyone to bow to Feng Jiao and Du Fan. Thank you for saving us. The Mu family will never forget your great kindness. No need to thank me, Feng Jiao said. After glancing at them, she went inside and prepared to rest. Seeing her leave, the Mu family head said to the people, let's rest here tonight. You can pick up the other people. Patriarch, do you know who the person who did this to you is? The third elder asked. The Mu family head's eyes flashed. Thinking of the piece of cloth in his sleeve, his face sank. It's the third elder. The material of the sleeve was the same material on the third elder's body, but he didn't expect that he would do this to him. I know it's him. He also wants to slander me, saying that I plotted against the Patriarch, pouring black water on me. When I brought everyone to find you, he stopped me in every way. I knew he was up to no good. The third elder said angrily, and said to the people behind him, you go back and pick up the people. Be careful. After all, there was still some distance from here. If they encountered fierce beasts, it would be troublesome. Yes, third elder, don't worry, we know. Everyone agreed. Because they saw that the family head and eldest young master were fine, their worried hearts also relaxed. Now, they wanted to go back together to pick them up so as to avoid any accidents. After they left, the more the third elder spoke, the angrier he became. He said that he would punish him severely when he returned. However, after a while, when the people who had gone to pick up the others returned, they found out that he had abandoned all of his clansmen and left on his own. Third Master said that the patriarch had met with misfortune. Third Elder and the others came out to look for him, but they didn't return. So he asked us to go with him. We thought that we should wait for Third Elder to come back, so he left by himself. After explaining the matter to their patriarchs, they couldn't help but lower their heads. Thinking about how they were unwilling to take the risk to search for the patriarch, they felt ashamed and didn't dare to raise their heads. He should have gone back alone. However, it will be extremely difficult for him to survive here alone. Mu Clan head shook his head. In his opinion, even if he had extraordinary strength, he would most likely die in this forest if he wanted to reach the transmission array safely by himself, unless he was attacked by fierce beasts. Chapter 3672. While the Third Elder was cursing, he did not know that the middle-aged man, who had left in the opposite direction, had turned back after walking for a distance. He had been hiding in the dark to observe the situation. It was only when he saw that his clansmen had returned that he realized that they had found the Master and the others. When he realized that the Master and the others were not dead, his heart was filled with resentment. He quietly followed them and saw that they were hiding in the spaceship. So that was how it was. No wonder they were still alive. Was it because they had those unfathomably powerful people protecting them? When he saw that they were all resting here, he had another idea. He took advantage of the darkness of the night to wander around, intending to lure the beasts and let them all die in the mouths of the beasts. However, he did not know that Du Fan and the others had sensed him the moment he approached them. They did not bat an eyelid and pretended not to notice him. However, in the darkness, he had quietly appeared and stared at the middle-aged man. When he saw that the man was sprinkling medicine around the spaceship in an attempt to attract the beasts, a murderous intent flashed across his cold eyes. However, he did not make a move. Instead, he watched as the man attracted more than a dozen beasts with his medicine while he hid in the towering tree and watched. Because of their oppressive aura, the beasts were agitated by the stimulation of the medicine, but they still did not dare to approach and only wandered around in the surroundings. Yi, who had watched this scene from the dark, quietly came behind the middle-aged man and kicked him down. Bang! Ah! The heavy kick caused a loud bang, and the middle-aged man cried out in alarm. He lost his balance and fell from the tree, landing heavily on the ground. Because that kick was so heavy, it was as if he couldn't catch his breath, nor was he able to circulate his spiritual chi. But at this moment, when he fell, the vicious beasts all rushed over, opening their mouths and revealing their sharp teeth as they pounced on him. Roar! Roar! Hiss! Ah! Don't! Go away! The beasts' cries were accompanied by gasps of horror. The cries of alarm and screams pierced through the night and reached everyone's ears clearly. It's the Third Master's voice. The members of the Mu family were startled. Because they heard that sound, they immediately turned to look in a certain direction. Among the dense trees, they did not see the figure they wanted to see. They only heard the roar of the ferocious beast, as well as that familiar, mournful cry. The Mu family head and the Third Elder looked at each other. The two of them raised their chi and jumped to a high place to watch. This time, they couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He saw more than a dozen ferocious beasts surrounding him and biting him. He was kicked and rolled on the ground. Those ferocious beasts did not bite him to death. Instead, they played with him. Sometimes it would take deep bites, sometimes it would take shallow bites, biting him until his body was covered in blood and he screamed in pain. The thick smell of blood spread in the air until they saw one of his arms being torn off by a ferocious beast. That scene made their hearts turn cold, especially the Mu clan head. He knew that if it weren't for the fact that the father and son had escaped by a fluke earlier, then it was very likely that they would have ended up like their third brother. Thus, even though his heart trembled slightly when he saw this scene, he still coldly watched. All of this was his own fault. He could not blame anyone else. Crack! Ah! Chapter 3673. The members of the Mu family were silent. No one spoke, and they didn't know what to say. Dufan glanced at them, then turned and walked back to the spaceship, leaving them alone. Ing-Yi also quietly returned to the spaceship and told Lung Hua and the others about the man's actions. In the end, everyone nodded and said, "It's late, let's all rest." After drinking a little wine, everyone slept soundly that night. In addition, there was a barrier protecting the spaceship, so they were able to rest at ease. The next morning, Qin Xin and Bai Qingxin got up early to cook porridge for everyone. Smelling the fragrance that permeated the spaceship, they all got up one by one. "What porridge did you cook this morning? Why is it so fragrant?" Wei Feng leaned over to the table and sniffed, then opened the lid and took a look. Bai Qingchang smiled slightly and said, "It's a thick soup made from the game you caught yesterday, and then it's used to cook porridge." Qin Xin and I just tasted it, and it's not bad. It's not just not bad. I'm hungry just from smelling it. Dufan walked over with a smile and said, "It's good to have you here. We don't have to worry about food on the way." Hearing this, the two couldn't help but smile, sit down and eat. "We left some inside for Master." When everyone heard this, they all sat down and ate. After eating, Dufan looked at Lung Hua and said, "It's said that it will take half a month to get out of here. Now that it's dawn, it's about time for us to set off, right?" Lung Hua glanced at the members of the Mu family below and said, "We can set off at any time." Dufan looked down and opened the fan in his hand with a swish. He fanned himself in front of him and said with a smile, "I'll go down and say a few words to them." After saying that, he walked down. Seeing Dufan come down, the Mu family's patriarch stood up. Before he could speak, he heard his voice. "We're ready to leave. You should also leave quickly. There are a lot of divine beasts in this area. Once we leave this area, we might not encounter any divine beasts, even if we encounter some vicious beasts." Hearing this, Patriarch Mu nodded. "We are also ready to leave, but..." He hesitated for a moment, looking at Dufan, not knowing if he should speak. "Mu family head, do you still have something to say?" Dufan raised his eyebrows and asked, "Noble Lord saved us, but we don't know how to address you. Can you tell us how to address you? That way, the Mu clan will remember who our benefactor is." The Mu clan head said. Hearing this, Dufan smiled. He fanned himself with the fan in his hand and said, "My mistress's husband's surname is Xianyuan. You can call her Madam Xianyuan." "Madam Xianyuan?" Clan head Mu was slightly surprised, but he still nodded. "Thank you. This Mu will remember." He then exchanged a few more words with Dufan, saying that if they ever came to the Mu family's place in the future, they would be treated with great hospitality and so on. Goodbye. Dufan smiled and turned back to the ship. Not long after, the ship slowly rose in front of the Mu clan's eyes. Watching them leave, the Mu family's patriarch turned around and said to everyone, "Let's go too. Try to get out of this area before dark today." "Yes," everyone responded. Some supported the injured clansmen, and some carried the clansmen who couldn't walk. The group walked in the direction of their family's transmission array. Chapter 3674. Wei Feng looked at the flaming arrow flying towards them and let out a soft sound. Astonishment was written all over his face. The flaming arrow flew up, but was bounced back when it came into contact with the barrier outside the spaceship. However, there were many more arrows flying toward them like rain. "Are those people down there stupid?" Luo Yu crossed his arms and leaned against the edge of the spaceship. He looked at the people shooting arrows below with a strange expression on his face. There's probably something wrong with their heads. Fan Lin smiled and looked at the scene below. Which normal person would attack a huge spaceship like theirs? Furthermore, they didn't stop after seeing the arrows being bounced back. Instead, they increased the force of their shots. I can't see clearly because of the leaves, but I can faintly see human figures. They don't look like mercenaries. Dufan fanned himself and glanced down. No one stopped those people from shooting because, to them, this scene was like a child smashing a rock with an egg. It couldn't hurt them and only hurt themselves. Look over there. There's a large, empty space over there. Let's go there and rest. Huilang pointed at a piece of flat land about a kilometer in front of them. There was no cover there, and it was suitable for their spaceship to land. All right, everyone agreed and headed in that direction. When they landed the spaceship, they didn't see their master come out of the cabin. Fan Lin couldn't help but look at Lung Shuang and ask, "Master has been inside all day. Do you want to go in and take a look?" Lung Shuang glanced at him and said, "Master said that she's cultivating. Don't disturb her. Master's spirit has improved a lot over the past few days. Her morning sickness also stopped appearing after eating those pills. She wants to seize the opportunity to cultivate and raise her strength." Bai Qingxing walked over and said, "Don't worry. Master knows what she's doing. Furthermore, she's pregnant now. She'll be even more careful." Fan Lin nodded when he heard their words. He only glanced at the cabin and didn't say anything else. "Wei Feng and I will go and see what's around. Qing Cheng, Qin Xian, you guys prepare dinner. We'll be back in a while." Luo Yu shouted at them. When he saw Hui Lang standing at the side and looking around with a straight face, he said, "Hui Lang, come with us." This kid, ever since the Yama Lord fell into a coma, his sloppy temperament had been restrained quite a bit. It was just that he always pulled a long face all day long. Looking at him made one feel bad for him. Hui Lang originally wanted to refuse, but unexpectedly, Wei Feng had already walked forward and placed a hand on his shoulder. Let's go. Just treat it as a walk and exercise. Don't always stay on the spaceship." As they watched him being taken away by Wei Feng and Luo Yu, everyone glanced at each other and smiled before getting to work. "I'm going to pick up some branches to prepare a fire," Guillermo said as he walked down from the spacecraft. Seeing that they had all gone down, Lung Hua and the others stood guard around the spaceship and waited for them to return. As the sky darkened, the leaves in the forest not far away from the spaceship rustled despite the absence of wind. It seemed as if someone was approaching the spaceship. Chapter 3675. Who are these people? Why are they dressed like this? Luo Yu looked at the 100 over people in surprise. All of them were barefooted and wrapped in beast skin. They carried a quiver full of arrows on their backs that were covered in mud and held bows in their hands. They were quietly approaching their spaceship with cat-like footsteps. Wei Feng stared at those people for a while and said with a strange expression, "They seem to be the idiots who shot our spaceship with arrows earlier." "They're not idiots." Hui Lang stared at those people with a cold face and said, "They should be savages living in the forest, also known as beastmen. Master mentioned before that savages aren't scary, but beastmen have to be careful. Their explosive power is extremely strong." Hearing that, Wei Feng sized up those people and said, "These people aren't spirit cultivators, so they don't have any spirit energy aura. However, their profound energy is very dense. It shouldn't be too troublesome to deal with these 100 over people." Luo Yu rubbed his chin and pondered. "Hey, look at what they're doing." Wei Feng gestured for the two of them to look forward. They saw that the 100 over beastmen quietly retreated and gathered together to talk about something. It was completely incomprehensible, but after they retreated, half of them quickly left. The speed at which they left was extremely fast. Their silhouettes flitted through the leaves as nimbly as monkeys. Not long after, one by one, they came back with things on their backs. They gathered together and talked about something. Then the orcs scattered the things they had brought around the area where the spaceship was parked. "What are they scattering? Should we stop them?" Luo Yu asked, who knew that as soon as he finished speaking, the surrounding flames instantly surged. Seeing their spaceship surrounded by flames, and seeing those beastmen rushing out with bows and arrows in their hands, or holding weapons that they picked up from God knows where and shouting, they couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Damn it, these guys actually used this move. When the three of them saw that, they immediately rushed forward. Although the flames couldn't burn the spaceship that was surrounded by the barrier, the heat of the flames would heat up the people inside the spaceship. To think that they were calling these beastmen idiots. It turned out that they were planning to use fire to force the people inside the spaceship out. Guillermo, who was preparing a fire not far away from the spaceship, glanced at those people. Seeing those strangely dressed people standing behind the flames and shouting, his gaze turned cold, and he instantly released his pressure. The powerful pressure formed a stream of air that attacked with him as the center. The aura was so powerful that it instantly made those beastmen who were shouting and waving their bows and arrows squat down in pain. Under the powerful pressure, the strength formed a clear contrast. Chapter 3676. Cries of alarm rang out as everyone was sent flying. Their bodies heavily smashed into the trees in the distance and rolled onto the ground. All of them spat out blood as they looked at the people standing there in shock. A wolf. One of them howled like a wolf. The orcs that had fallen to the ground quickly jumped up as if they weren't injured and quickly fled. Seeing their figures quickly leave, Wei Feng couldn't help but be surprised. The bodies of these orcs are actually so tough. After receiving that attack that contained pressure, they can still be so nimble? They probably won't dare to come again. Let's prepare for dinner. As Luo Yu spoke, he prepared the game that he had hunted and roasted it over the fire. Feng Jiu, who was cultivating in the space, didn't know what was happening outside. She was calmly cultivating and consolidating her current cultivation. During this period of cultivation, she realized that because her strength had plummeted, it was difficult for her to improve. At the very least, her strength wouldn't be able to advance in a short period of time. However, she could use this period of time to consolidate her strength and wait for a suitable opportunity to advance in the future. The green lotus in her body no longer surged with vitality because of that battle. It had formed a bud as if it was in the process of self-recovery. Because she couldn't use the green lotus chi, she was a little worried. This was because although the aura in Xianyuan Mo's body had been suppressed, it would be difficult for him to wake up as long as the black lotus chi was not removed. However, to remove the black lotus chi that had already penetrated deep into his bones, one could imagine how difficult it would be. She had once read in an ancient record that if she could find an ancient golden lotus, she might be able to use the power of the ancient golden lotus to disperse the black lotus chi in his body. However, she didn't have any clue as to where the ancient golden lotus was. She moved her hands and withdrew the spiritual aura that she was releasing. She gently exhaled and slowly opened her eyes. Her gaze fell on Xianyuan Mo, who wasn't far away. She walked forward and helped him check the condition of his body. Then, she took out a golden lotus seed from the space and stuffed it into his mouth. She had given Mo Chen the golden lotus seeds she had obtained from the immortal ascension stairs. Apart from the one she had thrown into the spirit spring, she had fed the rest to Mo Zhe. However, even after consuming a few golden lotus seeds, his body did not feel any better. Zhe, the place we're in now, is called the Nine Profound Heavenly Realm. This place is actually ownerless. She held his hand and said softly, "What do you think about turning this place into our territory? Although my strength has dropped to the level of a mortal venerable, it doesn't matter. In a few years, my strength will definitely return to its peak. Once we get out of this savage wilderness, we'll find a place to settle down and wait for our child to be born." She stayed in the room and chatted with him for a while before going outside. When she came outside, Qin Xian and the others had already prepared the food. Feeling the fluctuations in the air, she raised her eyebrows and asked, "Did you just fight with someone?" Luo Yu grinned and said, "Master, you just glanced at it and you knew?" Hearing this, Feng Jiu couldn't help but laugh and shake his head. "Do I even need to look? The fluctuations in the air haven't dissipated yet, right?" Chapter 3677. We'll only rest here for one night. As long as they don't offend us, we won't kill them. Feng Jiu slowly walked to the table and sat down, saying, "We should be out of this forest in a few days. After dinner, let's discuss what to do next." Hearing this, everyone agreed and sat down to eat. After dinner, Feng Nine told them about the arrangements after leaving the desolate, ominous land. In the end, she said, choose a town to settle down and let me wait for delivery. During this period, I won't care about other things, but you must quickly gain a foothold in this place and make a name for yourself. Besides, you must collect information and other things. You must do everything one by one. Master, don't worry. Leave these things to us. We've been discussing these days and have already come up with a plan. Du Fan smiled. Oh, what plan? Tell me about it. Feng Jiu sat on the soft couch and drank tea. Actually, with the strength of each of us, it's easy to make a name for ourselves here. However, after some discussion, we feel that since the four major sects and the four major sects are the leaders here, we can form our own forces and develop other side businesses in one direction to quickly infiltrate all parts of the continent. Hearing this, Luo Yu also said, originally, we were thinking of sending some people to infiltrate those sects to establish a foothold. However, after thinking about it, we feel that instead of going to those sects, it's better for us to do our old business. It's probably more suitable for us. Hearing him mention his old profession, Feng Jiu couldn't help but smile and squint at him. Oh, then what's your old business? Hee, killing people. Everyone smiled at each other and said in unison. Feng Jiu glanced at them and took a sip of tea, saying, then let's call ourselves Yin Dian. However, you should know the rules. We know. According to the old rules, either we don't accept the mission or we have to complete it once we accept it. Moreover, we can't kill the innocent. We all know that. Everyone agreed. Roar, roar. Suddenly, a roar rang out in the night. It sounded like the roar of a beast, but it also sounded like the roar of a human. Immediately after, a series of chaotic noises rang out. The leaves rustled, and the sound of rustling spread out in the night. They couldn't see anyone, but they could hear a lot of movement. It was as if they were surrounded. Everyone looked around and saw pairs of cold, bloodthirsty eyes staring at them in the night. The surrounding trees were shaking crazily. It's a wolf pack. And those orcs? TSK, why are all of you hiding in the trees and shaking your leaves for? Wei Feng sneered and glanced at the orcs hiding in the trees with amusement. Maybe they think we can't see them hiding in the trees, Lung Hua said gently with a hint of a smile in his voice. Feng Jiu looked around and said to them, since you guys are full and have nothing to do, let's take care of the wolves. You can also dig out some crystal cores to exchange for money. Hearing this, everyone was stunned and then smiled. Okay. As soon as they finished speaking, they walked out of the spaceship. They withdrew their pressure and attacked with sharp sword chi. Roar! You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.